What if the Earth could actually talk? I mean, really talk? What if it could just sit us down and give us its own medical report? Well, today we're looking at a pretty wild piece of source material that imagines just that. This isn't some scientific paper. It's a message that claims to be directly from the planet itself, Gaia. And let me tell you, it flips everything we think we know about the climate right on its head. Right off the bat, the message starts with this incredibly blunt opening. You immediately get the persona of Gaia, the ancient Earth. She's not here to be gentle. She's here to set the record straight about her own health, and frankly, she seems pretty unimpressed with all our panicking.
So, before Gaia even starts making her case, she insists that we understand one crucial thing: the unbelievable scale of geological time. To see things from her point of view, we have to kind of shrink our entire existence down to size.
And this visual really says it all, doesn't it? From Gaia's perspective, after watching continents drift and surviving 5 mass extinctions, all of human history is just a blip, an eyelash blink. And the source uses this to ask a pretty tough question. With such a tiny, limited view of time, how can we be so arrogant to think we know exactly what an ancient planet needs?
Okay, so if the planet really is sick, what's the actual diagnosis, according to the story? Well, get this, it's not a fever. It's a deep, long-term chill that's been going on for millions of years. This graph is at the absolute heart of Gaia's diagnosis. It shows that for the last 34 million years, Earth has been in what's known as the Cenozoic Ice Age, basically a long period defined by having ice at the poles. From this long-term view, polar ice caps aren't the norm. They're an anomaly. They're a symptom of being unwell. As the quote says, Gaia prefers it warm.
280 parts per million.
You've probably heard that number before. It's often talked about as the ideal pre-industrial CO2 level, this paradise we tragically lost. But this source gives us a totally different and honestly shocking take. It claims that 280 ppm wasn't paradise at all. For Gaia, that was her personal intensive care unit, a dangerously low level of atmospheric carbon that had the planet on the brink of a total deep freeze, basically a planetary flatline.
And this is where we see a complete 180, a total paradigm shift. What mainstream thinking calls toxic pollution, this narrative calls vital food and medicine. That lost paradise at 280 ppm? Nope, it was an ice-cold ICU. Fossil fuels aren't a weapon of destruction, they're a lost pantry. And the most controversial part? Humans aren't the destroyers, we're the healers who found the key.
Okay. So, if the planet was freezing and basically starving for carbon, how in the world did it get into that state? Well, the source provides an explanation that goes back to an ancient evolutionary oops. The story starts about 300 million years ago. These enormous forests were sucking incredible amounts of CO2 out of the atmosphere. But when the trees died, there was a huge problem. The specific types of fungi and bacteria that decompose wood hadn't evolved yet. So instead of rotting and releasing that carbon back into the cycle, all that wood just got buried, trapping its carbon deep underground and creating what the source calls a massive carbon prison.
And that brings us to this really powerful metaphor. The planet basically locked its own food supply away in a giant vault and then lost the key for millions of years. According to this narrative, that is what broke the natural carbon cycle and started that long, dangerous cooling trend.
Which brings us to what is easily the most startling claim in this whole story, that the Industrial Revolution wasn't an act of planetary destruction, but an act of planetary healing.
So in this story, when humanity figured out how to dig up and burn fossil fuels, we didn't know it, but we had stumbled upon the key to that ancient frozen pantry. We started releasing all that trapped, life-giving CO2 back into the atmosphere, essentially giving Gaia back her own stolen property. And the source material does not mince words here. It frames our CO2 emissions as a form of medicine. This quote really says it all. It's not poison, it's warm chicken soup for a body that's been chronically cold. It's what's finally ending the long ice age and causing this massive global greening.
Now, you might be thinking this all sounds a little wild, right? But the source does point to several established scientific sources to support this narrative. It cites NASA satellite data showing that the planet is getting greener as CO2 rises. It points to studies in Nature Geoscience showing just how low CO2 levels got during past ice ages. It even references the British Antarctic Survey and research from the University of Hamburg to back up its claims about carbon storage and the ongoing Cenozoic Ice Age.
So, if CO2 is the medicine, then what's the real disease?
Well, the narrative argues that we are completely, totally focused on the wrong crisis. It's a case of mistaken identity.
The source makes a really sharp distinction here. On the one hand, you've got CO2, which it calls medicine for the lungs, for the biosphere. But on the other hand, you have the plastics, the pesticides, the endless concrete. That, the source says, is the real poison. It's what's contaminating the planet's blood and skin, its oceans and soils.
To highlight just how absurd it thinks our current focus is, the source uses this really powerful analogy. It argues that we are obsessing over giving the patient a carefully measured glass of water, the CO2, while at the very same time, we're holding its head underwater with actual physical pollution. It's presented as this deep, dangerous contradiction.
And this really gets to the choice that the source lays out for us. Are we going to embrace our role as these unlikely healers who are liberating life-giving carbon while finally stopping the actual poisoning of the Earth? Or are we going to keep confusing the medicine for the disease?
And for the final word, the source zooms all the way out for a truly cosmic perspective, and it delivers one last, very stark warning.
In the end, the message is brutally simple. No matter what we decide to do, the planet will be fine. It survived way worse things than us. The real question this narrative leaves us wrestling with is, will we? As Gaia herself puts it, I have time, you don't. A pretty chilling thought to leave you with.